Hey, another thought I felt like spewing onto the internet is it feels like in today's world, an article that I'd read a number of years ago is definitely coming true. It was the article, I forgot who it was by, but it talked about how in the future, the most expensive commodity will be human time. And by that, meaning not dealing with a machine or an interface that separates you. So I've thought about this for a while with if you ever heard of them, third places, how they're disappearing, and how everything's become a lot more atomized. And the thought that comes to mind, like to explain this more and tie it all together, was there was a book called The Effective Executive, written, I forgot who by, terrible memory, I read even cover to cover, old ass English book, on how to be an effective executive. So this guy, apparently he was a coach and consultant for a number of large companies. And what he had to figure out with his diverse clientele was how to tell if a business is being run effectively, or factories, because that's what he was working with a lot. And he found that an effective factory was a quiet one. Very interesting, because he found that, as he worded it, the sounds of industry, people running around, lots of machinery sounds, is chaos. It is not organized well. If it was organized well, you wouldn't need people in the factory. And I get the impression, or you wouldn't have people running around from here. You have a conveyor belt, just the small trum, 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 as things move along and as something gets stamped, right? And I feel like that idea of efficiency has almost engulfed a lot of our modern day world. And it's interesting. It's both good and bad. So nowadays, instead of going to a local, craftsman to make some furniture or making it yourself, you can go to IKEA, where it's in a box and it's nicely flat stacked, so it's lot more cost effective because it's made on a conveyor line. But it lacks a lot of this human element, you might say. Or instead of going out to eat, you can have the food delivered to you, removing the need to interact with people, but and also in some ways reducing the cost, in some ways increasing it. Or we don't have arcades. Malls are dying since COVID, because everybody shops on Amazon. It's called the Amazon effect even. And so I find it interesting. And also, just to go back to a third place, because you might have not heard that term before. So a third place is basically, you've got one place which is your home, that's where you sleep. Then you've got another place which is work, and then a third place where you do something else to stay sane, right? Stay sane, often like meet people, make friends, maybe find a partner, something like that. For many people, that's also been, an example might be church. For many people, still nowadays, church is important. But with religion being on a declining trend, if you just look at the stats over the last 20 or 30 years, I thought it was at least a 10% decline. I thought it might have been up to 20%, though. Don't quote me on that, though. Like many of these places, let's say churches, bars, arcades were a thing, are just disappearing. And I get the impression that a lot of experiences and aspects of life are becoming atomized for possibly the sake of efficiency. And we have efficiency, you have a sterile environment. And so I think at the same time as is making life better in many ways, is also making life, I guess, the quality of like the human experience, a lot more I guess sterile is the only word I can think of. Just clean in a way that you don't have as many, adventurous experiences like, oh yeah, when I was young, that kind of thing. Or the, you know what, let's just go and do something random. Or, hey, dude at the bar, want to chat? Like people lost social skills the moment that everything became digital, right? And that's why people are, businesses are actually very desperate for people with good communication skills. Um, but yeah, that's I'm starting to realize that that article, which said in the future, the most expensive commodity will be human time and like interaction with another person. I'm definitely starting to see it, especially with the use of things like AI to try and bridge those final gaps of human interaction, so you don't have to deal with another person. Um, I think it's becoming very very obvious that that's becoming the case, because even in, for example, China, if we're talking about AI and romantic relationships, people think it's like, oh, that's not going to happen, or some people are like, oh yeah, absolutely. But the reality of it is that millions of people nowadays are chatting to an AI robot for like psychiatry, or just getting life advice, or that's why there's been a number of coaching AIs. I've heard that as a possible business model for AI, and also why in China there was this AI made by the Microsoft China division. I don't believe, or I don't remember exactly what it was called, but they made this AI called Xiao Ice that, to my understanding, was designed, was rewarded and trained to keep the conversation going. So the more back and forth replies it was able to get out of a user, the more it was rewarded. So it became very good at keeping a conversation going and keeping people engaged. And now in China, one of its functions is an AI girlfriend, AI boyfriend, and it is being used by supposedly 600 million people. I had no idea about this, and it's probably more now since last I checked, but it's a mind-boggling statistic. So I think in today's world, one of the first world challenges, because there's many, like, food security, water security, and that, right? Because I'd say that also needs to just be recognized, is that a loss of the human element in our efficient world. Anyways, that was my thoughts there. Let me know what you think if you have any, and I guess have a good one.